Good morning and welcome to the David and David on Real Estate podcast. We are today on episode number 162 and we have Jodi Simpson returning. Jodi, welcome back. It's so good to have you on again.
Thank you for having me again. That you didn't choose not to have me after the last episode.
So
Well, we decided in the last episode that we're now charging fees for guests, so we can. So this will be the second installment that we'll get. So
Oh yeah, adding this cost to my list.
David Korman's don't scare our guests. We want
just
more
kidding.
guests to return and come back to us.
Yeah, no, that's it's our pleasure to have you on and continue our conversation. And we've sort of left off in the last episode talking about some of the cost and investment, that you make, for certain things to set up your business. And one of the, no matter how much you're spending, like dollar wise, to set up, the biggest investment for success is the amount of time that you're going to put into it.
Yeah.
And so, the more time you put in, all the other stuff is important. Like you need the social media, you need the branding, you need to do all that, but you're only going to be successful in any of that by putting in the time. And that's what I think I've seen over my career. And I think David sees it his, like, one thing when we look at the successful realtors, and you met some really successful realtors at Sutton Summit. The one common, they all have different styles, but the one common thing is they all put in a lot of time and effort into it.
Yeah.
They're professional in what they do. So that's probably the key to success across the board. But we talked about the licensing part of it that you go through as a young realtor starting out, but then like a crucial part of that of becoming a realtor is the choice that you had to make of where you're going to start your business, choosing the right brokerage. So that's what we really want to talk to you about, that because that's not an easy decision, I imagine.
No, it is not. And I took my time. I think I took about 3 weeks or so to make that decision because it is a big one. Right? I think finding the right brokerage that aligns with your values, styles, commission splits is also a part, but there's just so many factors to really consider. And I think the worst thing that a new agent could do is to rush that process.
100%. So talk us through that a little bit. Talk us through your decision-making process.
Yeah, so I watched a ton of YouTube videos, like tons and tons and tons. There's a lot of material out there, which is really good, like good content about some of the pros and cons of different brokerages. So did that. I spoke to a couple of my colleagues that are also realtors, and got their very honest opinion on where they worked and what their thoughts were. I also read a couple brokerages that I was thinking of. I read their reviews on Google, right? So I wanted to hear what clients were saying about their interactions with them. Maybe some were good, maybe some were complaints. I wanted to kind of see what they did or how they presented themselves. So did that, and then I eventually was left with two. So at the very end, there were two brokerages, one being Sutton Summit, and then another, and yeah, then decided to pull the trigger with Sutton Summit, and now here I am.
And Jodi, you met with how many brokerages did you meet with before making your final decision?
Yeah, I met with four.
You met with
So
four.
after all the research of probably, zooming out and looking at probably at 10, I then zoomed in and landed with four, did interviews, and all the interviews were really different. Some of them, it was like a two-way street. They wanted to make sure I was a good fit for them. I did a couple tests at some of the brokerages, like a personality test. I don't know if it's an IQ, but personality test and all that kind of stuff. And then some were more just I guess me asking questions, but then walking me through the business and, yeah, some of the stats, right, of their company and stuff like that. So there was a lot of information. The interviews were really good. There was one interview I had, and as soon as I walked out, I just knew it wouldn't be a good fit for me culturally. culture fit for me is like a top priority, right? Like I think where you work is so, so important. And then I remember just having like a gut feeling of, no, I can't see myself here. So that helped me again go from that 4 kind of down to the 2. And I also didn't want a brokerage that was very like cutthroat. Like, people don't collaborate, people don't, yes, we're all competing for the same business, but I believe in abundance, right? I don't have a scarcity mindset. I think if you sold a house, I can also sell a house. Me selling a house doesn't mean that you can't do it, right? And vice versa. So I definitely didn't
1000%.
yeah, so I didn't want to work for a brokerage where, again, it was very cutthroat. People were just focused on their own business. No one was willing to help or even give advice. So that was something I really considered when choosing a brokerage.
So I guess, you've got to figure out even before you start the interview process what your priorities are, what you're sort of looking for. And so maybe just explain what you thought like your number one, number two priorities were, and then did that change once you started the process and got exposed to these brokerages?
Yeah, I would say my number one priority was mentorship. So mentorship and then training, right? Because I have the foundation from Humber with the licensing process, right? So it's like, okay, how am I going to take what I learned and now build on that? So mentorship training was very important. Number one, I would say from the beginning of me thinking about brokerages to interviewing, that stayed the same. It was still number one all throughout. I would say number two was the culture. Again, if I'm going to be, collaborating, working with some of these people on potential deals, I want to make sure there's a good culture. They like to collaborate. So that was also like very high and number two. And then number three of priorities for me was the money, right? Commission splits. Like how much am I going to get and how much is the brokerage taking? So it was important, not number one, but definitely a top consideration for sure.
I love that you didn't say leads. Because so
Uh,
many realtors that interview, leads are a top question that we probably get at every single interview, but leads were not a top priority for you. Can you kind of talk us through that a little bit?
Yeah, it wasn't on my list because I assumed, and maybe, me just being, I don't know, maybe naive in that sense, but I just assumed that the brokerage wouldn't give me leads. So it was an expectation for me because it's like, okay, if you can teach me how to get leads, then I can do it on myself, by myself, right? I don't need you to give me a lead. If you teach me how to fish, I can fish, right? And that's how I look at it.
And honestly, I think that is the biggest differentiating factor between, a true entrepreneur
Hmm.
and an employee who, expects to um, you know, have food put on their table, right? I think you just nailed the nail on the head. I think as an entrepreneur, we get excited about building something, right? And you get excited about attracting something or someone that you truly want to work with. And the
Hmm.
example I always give is like, if you're into motorcycles and your client's into ballerinas, there's going to be a misconnect. You're going to have nothing to talk about, right?
Hmm.
But if you're a car buff and you walk into a listing appointment and you see, a really cool car in the driveway, I think you're going to spend the next, half an hour talking about real estate and the next hour talking about cars. And that's going to make your life, seem, or your work seem very different and much easier, right? So if you can attract a client to your brand
Hmm.
that you're aligned with, it's going to make your life and your work a lot easier
Yeah.
versus getting a lead where there's zero alignment, zero loyalty, um, zero inclination to work with that professional. And you're really competing with 102,000 other realtors who can do the job very similarly to how you can. So what really differentiates you? Well, then you're really talking about the money. And do you really want to compete for a client on money? I think that's the worst way to run any business.
Yeah.
Well, I am so impressed, Jody, just from one statement you you made there, and you said, like, I have 100% confidence you're going to be extremely successful in this, because you said, teach me how to fish and I'll fish. And I think that's the right attitude to take. Not, you know, do everything for me. I got the same thing with lawyers. We have some lawyers we bring in. It's like, okay, bring, do everything for me. I need the answer. I got a problem on a file. What's the answer? No, you're the lawyer. You figure out the answer. I'm happy to talk to you about it, but do some work first. Don't just sit back and say, "Oh, I don't know. Maybe David knows because he's been doing this for a lot longer." So instead of me trying to do the research or figure it out, I'll just ask him. That lawyer's not going to be successful. Same thing in your business. You want David to be teach me how to fish, I'll fish,
Right.
right? And,
Exactly.
and I think that's the right attitude. So I got 100% confidence in your success.
Yeah. And it also just like sets you up in for success by not having expectations. I think sometimes having expectations is dangerous. I definitely think you should have a goal and a plan, but once you kind of like put it out there that, hey, you should be the one giving me something, I think that's horrible, right? Like, and personally, that's not the way I operate. It's like if it happens, if I do get a lead from my brokerage, that's the cherry on top, but I'm not expecting it.
Yeah, and another thing in your priorities, I think that was the right way. Like, it's always important. You want to know what your fees are going to be, your costs, your commission splits. So, I'm not saying you ignore that, but I
Mhm.
like that it was number 3 or 4 in it, because the money will take care of itself. Okay. If you're successful, if you're doing deals and you're getting the right training and the right mentorship and you're out there doing the deals, the money's going to take care of itself. And at the end of the day, the difference in commissions and splits aren't as big a concern when you're successful. It becomes
Yeah,
more important when you're not successful, because you got all the expenses and you're not doing deals. It's harder. So yes, it should be on your list of priorities, but I think the other things are that you said are way more important in this process.
yeah, exactly. I think like once you have the right training and mentor and you feel, you know, aligned value-wise with the brokerage that you've chosen, I think the money will come, right? Like once you have those things, I think like, yeah, the sky's the limit. If you feel that you feel empowered by your brokerage, you have enough training, you know what you're doing, you're like empowered to go out there, you're gonna do it, right? So it's like that's why I wasn't so worried about the money, like definitely a factor, but for me, not the most important thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then
I
your
love it.
interviews are sorry, your interviews are with the leadership of the brokerages, right?
Right.
And so was it after you got it down to 2 that you started talking to agents in the brokerage?
Yes, exactly. So I was lucky enough that two of those brokerages invited me to an event, to a social event. So I was able to like ask some of the agents like their experience. I got to attend a training for the other brokerage. So it was kind of nice to see like how they do train. They did collaborate quite a bit, which was very nice. So just kind of seeing like firsthand and people can tell you anything, right? They want to sell you, they want you to get in your number, additional fees, to add to their ledger, right? So it's like sometimes you're just a number. So it was really nice to see, okay, this is how in fact collaborate. This is how they actually like treat their agents. Okay, agents are talking to each other, they like each other, they're collaborating, you know what I mean? Like, so it was really good to see besides just the interview and what they were telling me.
Yeah. And I wish more agents take advantage of coming to some of these networking and social events and training events that we have at the brokerage before making a decision, because I think they would learn a lot. And I think we would learn a lot about them, right?
Yeah,
So, in a long time, you were the one and only agent that actually took advantage of our invitation. I think it was great, and it was a great way for you to get some insight into, peeking back behind the curtains and seeing, what we're all about.
exactly. And honestly, I would highly recommend any like new agent looking at different brokerages to do that. Like ask them, like, can I come to a training event or a social event, just so they can really see how that brokerage operates, right?
100%. 100%. Awesome, Jodi. Well, thank you so much again for being on this episode. Really appreciate having you on again, and we're gonna have you back on the next episode where we're gonna dive a little bit more into your investment story, which is one of my favorite topics.
Okay, well, thank you so much.
Yeah, no, it was great having you. Thank you.
Okay, bye.